All right, welcome back. We are COMP125. That's client-side web development in the summer 2020 semester at Centennial, and it's week 9. Holy, part 1. We're going to talk about assignment 3 a little bit, and we're going to talk more Ajax today because we kind of did an intro last week. We kind of ran really quickly, so I want to go over that stuff again just so that you guys are good. But first, what I want to do is I want to talk about assignment 3. We're going to get there. So let me just bring up the details for assignment 3. And yeah, we're going to have an assignment. Here we go. So this assignment's worth 10% of your grade, approximately. It's due week 11, Friday, August the 7th, 2020 at midnight. So you have a couple weeks to get it done. What will you be asked to do? You're going to extend your mini portfolio site with assignment, well, the previous assignment, assignment 2. I should actually say assignment 2. You will write JavaScript code to read your paragraph data from the JSON file using Ajax and populate your page with this data. So what does this mean? So you have, if you did the mini portfolio assignment that I gave you correctly, then you had some paragraph data that you put inside of string variables. That's what you were supposed to do for your mini portfolio site. And now, instead of having them in string variables, you're going to read them from a file into those string variables. So it's just an extension of what you've already done. So it shouldn't be that difficult. The structure for your site will not change. So you're not going to add additional content or anything like that. Ensure that you use the appropriate data structure to contain your data. All right, and the appropriate looping structure to display the data on your HTML pages. You also use Ajax to populate all common components in your pages. For example, this is new: site header, nav bars, and site footer, which I will talk about how to do today, if I can, or next day. So that's what's happening. Here we have a couple of things here. We have, so most of it is, you have this paragraphs.json file that you're going to create, that you're going to store all of your paragraph text, your content into. So all of that is going to be stored in your paragraphs.json. I'm not giving you this file. You're going to make it, right? So it's going to have all the paragraphs. Now you could, the right thing to do is separate this, again, into some kind of JSON format. So you're going to have some kind of data that you're going to store in a specific format, so that when you read the data file, it's easy for you. Don't make it so that don't encode this file so it's too convoluted. Make it easy. And we'll talk about how to do that again as we go through it. One thing we've been struggling with is we keep on duplicating. Our nav bar is our nav bar. We keep on going through this over and over again. And it's like every time I add a new file, I got to copy and paste everything. And that really sucks. So we're going to talk about how to do your header file from a file as opposed to from your kind of like from each page. So that's one thing we're going to do. Same thing with your footer. And what we're also going to do is we're going to also inject these two things inside of your content. And I'll show you how to do all this stuff. So really what you have to do is take the things that I'm going to show you with my examples and integrate them into your content for your portfolio site. So it shouldn't be that challenging for you. But again, I'm talking from a professor perspective. So, for me, I may not, need to do this. There's one part that says include a web config file in the root of your site that defines a JSON MIME type. And this is if you want to put it up on Microsoft Azure. I'm going to show you how to do this as well. Probably next day, because sometimes we want to put our stuff up on on Microsoft Azure, and if you have a JSON file on Microsoft Azure, it'll be ignored. You won't be able to read it, right? So we'll talk about how to do that, and I'll show you how to put together a simple Microsoft Azure site. I don't expect you guys to use Azure at all, but sometimes that is an option as a backend. Internal documentation as before, and GitHub. You're also going to cloud host. I recommend somewhere on GitHub Pages. It's up to you. And then, of course, a short video. So lots and lots of work to do. But in terms of functionality, I think it's pretty straightforward, the stuff that you're going to have to do. The things you have to submit are a zip archive, please no RAR files, and also a link to your GitHub repository, a link to your mini portfolio site again, some on GitHub Pages, I recommend that, and a video demo on YouTube. Again, I will not mark your file, your project without a demo, okay? Without a demo. So please make sure you get a demo done so that I can mark it up. All right, that's what I'm looking for. That is assignment number 3, and it's due a couple of weeks out. You pretty much should be able to do most of it. Yeah, I got to get your feedback back for your other assignments too. I know, thank you. And I will be going through that. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit behind right now. I'm inundated with stuff that they've given me to do. So, but I will get it out to you guys as soon as possible. I do apologize for the lateness. That's incredibly late this time around. Okay, anyways, so this is your assignment. So make sure if you have any questions, again, over the next little while, I will go through the assignment details. But basically what you're doing is, in a nutshell, you're extending your mini portfolio site, the one that you did for me already, and we're reading from a file in order for you to get your content instead of reading a hard-coded string. Okay, that's the difference. As well as you're injecting your header and footer information as opposed to copying and pasting your header and footer in every file. Okay, so that's the difference between this project and something that we've already done, which is your mini portfolio site. So any questions before we move on? I know that's a really high level, and I did that in a really quick way, but I wanted to present this to you. I want you guys to start working on this as soon as you can, because this is a little bit more involved than the mini portfolio site that you did before, and I think it's going to be good to start as early as possible. Okay, let's move on then, if you have no questions around this one. All right, so that is this, and we're still talking about Ajax. So let me just get to that. I'm going to pull down the today. I'm going to download or clone my repository again. And remember, I want to show you how to do this again. So github.com/Centennial. And you should see that we have, last week we did lesson 8. Here it is, right? And we also have this thing. I'm going to clone this thing. And again, how I do it is I grab this code right here, this link, right, from my site. You can also grab this link. And then what you can do is you can go to a command prompt, right, and you can move into the right place. So let's say to desktop. So one thing is, oh, I have to mention this as well. I have finally updated my machine. So this is a different machine than the other one that I had. So some things are going to be different. For example, my Visual Studio Code is not going to have all the extensions that I had before. Who cares? I'll still be able to make it work. And the other thing is that on my desktop's actually on OneDrive. So if I go to desktop, which is what you see right here, and I want to put a new folder in there, if I want to teleport into this place, some of the easiest way to do that from a desktop perspective is kind of CD space and then drag and drop, right? And that might be the way. And notice it says users, me, OneDrive. So it's on OneDrive now. You might notice that as opposed to on my machine. Now there's advantages and disadvantages to this, and one of the disadvantages I always found when I'm running on OneDrive, which shouldn't bother you too much, is that I always find that if I'm a little bit behind or whatever, there might be a bit of a delay. So this kind of bugs me about the desktop stuff, but it's okay. Okay, so Git, and I want to right click. I want to paste that stuff. So again, online, this is the link. And if I go back to this and I paste it, and I want to put .git, that's what it is. I want to git clone is what I want to do. So git clone, I'll be okay. And .git. And what this does is it'll pull down from GitHub my COMP125 M2020 lesson 8, right? And it'll clone it on my desktop. Okay, so there it's done. Okay, so Here it is. And now what I can do is with my version of VS Code, which is not going to be as beautiful as yours because I haven't got any extensions on this thing whatsoever. Right now I just haven't had a chance to do that. You can see that I've got pretty much everything that we had last week. One thing we want to do, if I press Control backtick, I want to remove my remote, right? And I got to rename this thing too. So git remote remove origin takes it away. Okay. And let's just rename this project so it says lesson 9, so we can move on from here and not mess up with lesson 8. This is it. Again, I'm just reorganizing myself a little bit so you guys can see what I see. Okay. Nushik says, so basically it's our assignment 2 but some additions. Kind of, you're going to read from file. Alright, that's what you're doing, and you're reading some other stuff from files. Alright, so lesson 9. Let's just rejig the stuff we need to rejig. Remember, we have to change our package.json around, so it says lesson 9. This is kind of important to do, but not really. I'm also going to change my README file, because this is like lesson 8. Go to lesson 9. Right, and that's pretty much what I have to do to get going on this. I have a few updates now, and I'm going to say, we'll say updated projects, updated projects. Except I don't have my link. Let's make my lesson 9 online. So again, if I go to online, I'm going to go back to here. There is no lesson 9, right? But we're going to make it. So we're going to go new. So again, it's going to be COMP125 in the summer 2020 semester, lesson 9. And I made it private. Again. Let's fix that. It bugs me that Microsoft did that, by the way. To be honest, I have to tell you that it's a real pet peeve of mine. It should be public by default, but that's just me. Microsoft made a lot of little changes over the last little while, and I totally understand why they did it. They want to make it more user-friendly, but there's a bunch of developers that are complaining, saying, give me my old GitHub back. I'm not one of those, but when it comes to this part, it bugs me. It bugs me that they changed this to from public by default to private by default. That really bugs me. Like, look, it's still not visible. Change visibility. Because I forgot to do this. And let's try that again. Okay, sorry. All right, so now I need these last 2 lines. So these last 2 lines, what they'll do is they'll connect my local repository to my repository on GitHub. Again, you should have seen this many times by now. So there shouldn't be a big thing saying, Tom, I really don't know how to do GitHub anymore at this point. That would be kind of unacceptable at this point. Week 9. All right, so there we go. So we're up on GitHub, and let's take a look and see if that's true. If I refresh, you should see everything updated except this part for lesson 9. This part's the lesson 8. This part's the lesson 6. Let's fix that. That bugs me. I'm sorry. This one should be lesson 9. That's so funny. I didn't even notice that. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. I'll put that up after. And then, of course, we want to well, let's update the README file. Here, I'll do that now. Updated README file. Okay, and push. So we can work with the IDE, sorry, the editor, not just the command line. No. Okay, so let's check that out, and we should see that change go through. Yes. I wanted a space there, but whatever. Okay. I want to put this up on GitHub Pages now, and I want to show you that one more time. So people have been having trouble with this. So I'm going to go to GitHub Pages, and again, the way I would go there is I'm going to go to Settings. I'm going to scroll all the way down to Settings until it says GitHub Pages. I'm going to select my master branch, and if everything goes well, then it will populate it in time. You have to give it some time to do it, because if I go back to my code and I don't see a check mark up here somewhere, right, then it will not work. Example, commit my commits. Here is the check mark where it's showing, but here in my code a minute ago it wasn't. Now there's a check mark there. You notice the difference? There was a little dot and now there's a check mark. That means because it's finally been deployed properly. So if I go to this check mark, right, actually you can do it here too. Now it shows up as an environments. If I go to GitHub Pages and I go to view deployment, if it teleported or if it shared things properly, it'll be here. If it's not, then it's not ready yet. Some people are really freaked out about this. They're like, I don't know why, but my GitHub page is not working. Well, give it a second. Give it some time to propagate. It's going to take some time sometimes more than others. Don't worry about it. Sometimes it's the second push that you have to make. You have to redeploy it again. That's required too. Remember, this is a free service. Free services, you got to be a little bit more patient than when it's something that you pay for. Okay, so that's this thing. We deployed it, we're ready to go. And what does it do locally? So let's run this thing. So if I put in light-server, then it should work. Okay. Here's something. It says light server. It says cannot be loaded because running script is disabled on the system for more information. What do I do here? Because this is, remember, I told you this is my new system, and it prevents me from doing this. You guys went through this thing. How come this happened? What do I do to fix it? We've run this script before, and some people are still having issues with that. Here, this is what you do. You say cannot be loaded because running script is disabled on the system. I'm going to copy this little thing right here, and we're going to fix it. Look, if I go to Google and I type this in, it says PowerShell execution of scripts, and it gives us some solutions. And do this: set executable policy remote signed, right? It says, as administrator, you can execute this policy by typing it into your PowerShell window. And when you are done, you can put it back. No, I want this all the time. So I can run my scripts remotely, right? So I'm going to go to PowerShell, right? And run it as an admin, like it tells me to. And then type that in. And then press enter. And it says, do you want to do this? And I'm going to put yes, and then it should work now, right? So Y for yes, yes to all, link to no, right? And if I want to try it again, A for all, yes to all. It doesn't matter. It's done, okay? So now we should be able to get out of here. And what I need to do in order for me to test this sometimes is get out of this, and because it uses PowerShell, and go back into it, relaunch, right? Now let's try it and see if that fixed it. Maybe it didn't. Light server. Well, now there we go. Light server works. Allow access. Wonderful. Okay, and then I have this stuff. I loaded this from last day. I'll talk about that again. I've got the rest of this stuff going. I also have the contact page, but this is all stuff we've covered. Okay? All stuff we've covered before. So you see how I fixed my problem. It wasn't a big deal. I didn't cry about it. I just did it. I went online, Googled it, and it's done, right? And for you too as well, it's going to be sometimes where you're going to, as developers, you're going to be facing a block. We've got access to the greatest library in the world, the internet. Go and ask, but you need to know what to ask. That's some of the challenges that we face as developers. We don't know what questions to search for. And so this is why we're here together. All right, so cool. We've got our little structure here, and last day, let's talk about what we're doing inside of our app.js. Here's our app.js. We had these functions. So I had a function that was highlight active link. We talked about that. We also did this other function, add paragraphs to Jumbotron, and then validate forms. We did all that kind of stuff together with regular expressions. And then last day, we took regular expressions to the next level, and JSON data to the next level, because we were fooling around with JSON. And what we did was we loaded this address book data, right? That's what we did by using this XHR object. And I talked about it in a few steps. So step one, we make our XHR object. You're going to have to do this for assignment 3. You're going to have to make your XHR object. Step 2, you're going to have to make a GET request. That's the thing we normally do. And then you access the object that we want to open. For example, addressbook.json. Okay, now addressbook.json, granted, is not in the right place. I probably want to put this in a data folder. So let's do that together. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to make a new folder. We'll make a new folder called data. Right, there we go. And I'm going to take my addressbook.json and stick it in the data folder. All right, move. There we go. There's my addressbook.json. Wonderful. Except now my script will not connect to it anymore because addressbook.json is no good. What do I do? So remember how this would work. What is the entry point, right? It worked like this before when it was in the root, which means my script app.js is not the entry point. My script is my products.html. That is the entry point on that level. So all I really need to do is go /, and then the name of the folder, data / and then addressbook.json. And that should do the same job. If I save now and I go back, you can see that it loaded again, reloaded everything. And if I go back to the browser, here it is. And if I go to products, we should still see this. Right? So it's still loading this stuff from our page, from our file. Okay. So that's what you can put it in a different place. So this is step 2. Step 2 is connecting to the file that you want to load. All right. By the way, this file, I'm making it local, but it could be on another computer, right? Or on the server somewhere, the addressbook.json. So you're getting some data. Yay. Next, you're going to execute the request with a send method. The send method itself will execute the request. Okay. And I just wanted to make one thing I wanted to change, because from a settings perspective, sorry guys, I want to change the size of my text. Sorry, I want to make sure that that's good, because I want to make that different. Fast scrolling, where is that font? Here it is, fonts. Font size is 14. Let's go with an 18 font, because I know that people sometimes say it's too small. And I agree, it's too small. And that's how that looks. I think it's a little better. 18, maybe. How are you guys feeling? Tiago, what do you think? You think it's okay, font size wise? Are you able to see the screen, or should I go even higher? I'm asking a random person here, but fine, okay. Anyone else? You guys good? This is a good, I think it's a pretty good size. All right, great. Okay, so yeah, so these are the 3. So we send it, and then step 4, and this is not really step 4. I have to reiterate this again. Notice this big part right here of my, this is my event listener, right? So what's happening is this is listening for a ready state change on the XHR object. And remember, we're listening for 2 things, a ready state of 4 and a status of 200. Those 2 things must be that in order for us to ensure that the file has been loaded. If we don't do this, right, then what happens is the file can load or finish loading at any time it feels like it on the server. The server will prioritize it the way it will. You don't know when it's going to happen. So you need to wait for this to happen. Until it finishes loading, we don't have data. Now it's going to be momentarily. Like it'll happen like within milliseconds, but those milliseconds of delay could be enough that you get an undefined file, right? So if you try it outside of here, if you take your data from outside of this area right here, right? Notice this is like I put all my stuff inside of this event listener, then that would be a problem. In fact, every single time I listen, I'm going to have to do this when I'm listening for another file, right? So I could write a function to do this for me, where I pass the file or my data into a function, and then from there it does some of this stuff. But more or less, I did the following. I said that data is now, I'm going to parse the XHR response text object. The response text object is basically whatever I get from the data file, which is inside here, this addressbook.json, and this is the format that we use. We formatted it so that inside the address book there is an object. This is the object. That's the JSON object itself, right? Inside the object, right, so imagine an empty object, we have something of a property called an address book. The address book is a collection or an array of objects. And each of these objects have this structure: first name, last name, email address, contact number, and short message. However, what I want to point out to you is they don't have to. They don't have to be all the same. They can be totally different objects and structured in a totally different way. But that's on you. If you structure stuff in a haphazard, non-structured way, no schema, as an example, right? The challenge is that how are you going to read this in with any kind of, how are you going to do it? You have to make it so that you can deserialize the work that we've done here. This is serializing or encoding our data and storing it in a data format, a data transmission format, which is JSON, right? This is what we're doing. We encode it, store it in a certain way, and then what we want to do is we want to load it up again, okay? That's what we want to do it, and we need to know the structure of our object. So what we did last day was we structured our files. So we started off and we say, hey, load the object, cool, parse it into JSON. So now it's actual JSON data. And then what I did was we pointed a new address book or a variable to the data address book. Whoa, what? How did I do this? What address book? What are you talking about? Address book is the name of the file, addressbook.json. But address book is also the name of an array that's inside of our object. So what I'm doing is I'm saying, hey, this variable is pointing to the address book that's inside of the data file that I'm getting, right? And if I want to make this clearer, let's just rename this thing, because I had questions around this. This is data file, right? So the data file is the thing that I'm listening for. I'm opening it up and I've got this big data file or data object. Call it whatever you like, all right? And this data object or data file has an address book inside of it. All I'm doing with my variable address book is I'm pointing to this address book that's inside the data file, okay? And when I output it to the console, so if I was to go back to the page, and if I output it to the console, let's inspect and see what the console looks like. Wow, it's totally different. My console should be on the bottom of my page, not on the top of my page. But it doesn't really matter, right? So yeah, so this is where this is. And what I want to do, sorry, I just want to make sure that I put it on the bottom like so. There we go. So you can see that the first thing I print out is this. This is the data file itself. And then I do it again, but this time I convert it into a contact list. And the way I did the contact list last day, and I'm just going over this again because I may have lost you, right? So once I print this out, I could have stopped here. I could have said, okay, that's enough. I don't want to move on from here, right? Here's my address book. But instead, what I wanted to do is convert my address book data. So the stuff that I have in my address book, I want to convert it into a contact list. So one way of doing that is to do this, a contact list of any. Right? That's what this is. Okay. Here's another thing I could do. What if I change this to a contact list of objects.contact? Right? That's kind of what I want to do, right? A list of objects.contact. And it's almost like I could do, I'm just going to undo that change for a second. Let's rejig this thing for a second. And there's some other constructs we can use. We can say let contact list equal to a new, right? And I can use array of type. So array of type. This is actual thing in JavaScript that you can do. Objects.contact. Okay? And this could look very similar to what we've done before in the past. Now notice what it says. It says type arguments can only be used in TypeScript files, right? Because this is exactly what we want to try and do. This, right? I want to make an array of contact. How does this translate from TypeScript, because this is what this would be, into JavaScript? So let's go and take it on TypeScript for a second and take a look. TypeScriptlang.org. Let's be lazy. I love being lazy here on TypeScriptlang.org. And I want to do the same thing. I want to say that, okay, let's just copy paste from here. So I want to say something like this, sure. And don't worry about the errors. And then what does that translate into? Well, let contact list is new array. We don't have a type objects.contact, but this is perfectly acceptable on this side. That's what it would be like, new array. So that's definitely what I could do. I could do that, a new array, like this, right? And this is the exact same. There's no difference between the two. Array with empty brackets or array like this, same, right? The difference is this is an array of any, and so is this, all right, if I hover over. So it really depends on what you prefer. Me, I personally prefer this syntax. It's pretty clear. I know what it is. And if I'm not using TypeScript, then this is the way of going to go. If I'm using TypeScript, then I would do the other way. Let contact list is equal to a new array of type objects.contact, because that makes more sense to me. This would make great sense. And by the way, this is exactly the way you would write this in C# and Java and a bunch of other languages. Okay, so this is what I want to do, but this is what I can do right now because of my JavaScript where we're at right now. Okay, cool. So I've got a contact list, and then what I say is it's empty. It's an empty array. I need to do this first before I do anything else. If I don't do this, I can't define what my contact list is. I need to almost instantiate an empty container for the contact list. Then, for every record of the address book, so that's the JSON address book, right? I create a new temporary contact, which is of type objects.contact. That's what this contact is. Where am I getting objects.contact? Here in the contacts.js file. Contact.js is actually a class. It's inside of a IFI. This IFI here, it provides a module or namespace that encloses this, and it only allows objects.contact to escape because we're connecting it to our objects object. That's what it's called. It's just called objects, but objects is we're using this as a namespace. That's how you do it, right? And then when I connect to objects, which is in the global space up here outside of the IFI, objects itself has a contact property, this contact property, and that's what I'm accessing here in objects.contact. I'm accessing the contact class in the objects namespace. That's how it works. And then I'm saying, okay, cool, contact is an objects.contact. Then I'll say contact set contact to the record. Set contact is a method we wrote last week, right? So if I go to contact, set contact takes JSON data and converts our JSON data into, our properties. We strip out the data from our JSON and put it into our properties. This is one way of doing it. There's other ways too, but that's not a pretty decent way of doing it right there. Okay, so that's what that does. And like we said before, once we've done this, we convert our record into a contact, and then what I do is I go to my contact list and I push my new contact onto the list. So here I've already got it. Here I'm converting it to a contact type, a contact list, as opposed to an address book of objects. This, at this point right here, when we look in our file, these are just objects. They're unnamed anonymous objects. Sure, they have properties, first name, last name, email address, and blah blah, but they don't have to. And this structure here is kind of like an anonymous class, an object of an anonymous class I've made. There is no structure to the class. We structure the class as you go, which is where people go nuts with JavaScript. They're like, wait, it's totally unstructured. I mean, I could put anything I want in here. Yes, you're right. I could put a function in here. Yes, you're right. I could put other data in here. I can omit a short message from here. Yes, you're right. It's true. But if you did something like that, then this would fail on retrieval, because how would you retrieve each individual record? It might be more difficult to do. You could do it, but it would be more difficult to iterate through each record and load the data that's relevant, right? Unless you had a structure. So that's why we make a structure anyway, even though it doesn't have to be. So that's what this does. So address books goes through that structure, reads it, and makes a contact list. Now, once we had a contact list, I have a second for loop. I didn't have to do it this way. I could have done it all in this for loop right here. But I figured, let's just separate it. So I've outputted the contact list, and I've showed you the difference between an address book and a contact list, which is what you see when you look at this website, right? So when you go to the products, you can see when I'm looking at these two things, one is an anonymous object, an array of anonymous objects, and the other one is an array of contexts. That's different. Those two are very different. Why? Because the prototype is different. If I look in the prototype of this one, even though it says array, as an example, each of these, right, is of type object, right? And if I look at this one, each of these, even though they're of type object, are also the constructor we're using is contact, which is the way we want to go. Okay? So again, these are contacts, these are just anonymous objects. That's the difference between one thing and the other, but virtually the exact same in terms of usability. I can use both the exact same way. There is no difference for me using one or the other. No difference whatsoever. If I wanted to use JSON data and put it up here in my products list, I could do it. And in fact, most people do this. Or I can make it more structured and make it contacts that I put up on my contact list. It really is up to you. Personally, for me, this speaks to me. This second way speaks to me because now they're all contacts and I can do other things to them with my methods that I've built into these things. Here, there's nothing that they would do because unless I put the method inside of the actual structure itself, there is no method, right? It's an anonymous class. It's anonymous data. It's just data, right? Here it's data, but I can do more things with the data. I can convert it. I can print it. I can do whatever I want with it, right? And this is what I've kind of done down here. I said like, okay, so I want to now take the data in a for loop, and then what I'm doing is for every contact in the contact list, the one I've converted, and again, I could have done this inside, like I said, in this loop up here. I'm saying this again because I don't want you to think I need two loops here. I don't. I'm doing this so I can show you the difference between one and the other. I could have simply done this loop and done all this. But here what I'm doing is I'm creating an element in memory. The element I'm creating is a table row. Okay. I'm also connecting to my table body through a getElementById selector. So I'm using a selector syntax to select the table body ID, and I put that table body inside of my products.html. So I was sneaky. I went to my products.html and I put an ID of table body on the tbody element. All right. So now I can get a reference to it or hook into it here. Right. That's what the first step is of injecting content. Right. I have to have a place, an entry point. This is my entry point right here. Right. And this little block of empty text. Right. And what I want to do here is once I've got an entry point, this is the connection or the hook, if you will. I loop through each of the contacts, create a temporary row element, attach my template string, which is going to be injected with the contact information, first name, last name, contact number, and email address, and then I append that row to the table body that I made a reference to. And I do that for every contact in the contact list, for each contact in the contact list, in fact. And if I add another one, let's go into my contact list, and I've got these ones, and let's say I want to add another one. So let's make another superhero. So we got Peter Parker and all these other guys, right? Our superheroes. Let's make Bruce Banner. He's also one of my favorite superheroes. Turns into the Hulk when he's actually the good version of himself, right? So his name is Bruce Banner, right? But maybe we can put in Hulk at example.com. His phone number ends with a 9 instead of an 8. And his statement is something like, puny human, Hulk smash. Right? Because that's what he says all the time. At least we used to. All right, so that's what he does. That's Bruce Banner. And now I've added an extra thing in there. And then when I go back to my products list, now notice that my products list doesn't automatically update until I refresh, right? So it doesn't it doesn't keep listening for changes to my address book. So I'm not getting a push notification, hey, something's changed, update. We're not doing that right now. However, notice that as soon as I added this new entry in, it's in, right? So that's what happens. That's how easy it is. It updated my website. Why? Because I had an extra entry now. So I did another. I looped through all these different entries, and I have another. As long as I keep the same structure, I'm good to go. All right? Yeah, 1-800-GREEN. That's right. So does that make sense? So I'm just reviewing what we did last day because this is going to be key into what we're going to do now. Any questions around this stuff? Are you with me? Check marks for you're with me. X, you still don't understand. I got some check marks. It's okay not to understand, guys. It's better to tell me the truth and say, Prof, I don't get it. Tell me it again or show me one more time. You know, as opposed to, yeah, I get it. And then when you go and try it, you're like, wait, what? Wait, it doesn't work. Wait, how come it's not connecting? But remember what's happening. I just want to reiterate this one more time. You don't do this in the proper order. For example, if I didn't do this inside of this event loop, right? And this event is going to trigger every single time there's a ready state change, right? If I'm polling the file for changes. Every time I pull that file for changes. One thing I'm not doing is I'm not looking at that file. I'm not watching this file, this addressbook.json. I only look at it once. You know, I'm not keep listening for a file change. If I kept listening for a file change, then I could kind of reload. I'm not doing that right now. So that's one thing. So what we've done kind of JSON data, and in the PowerPoint I gave you, I'm just going to skip down to that area where we were stopping, right? So we talked about how to do stuff with our data URL and JSON, and we also talked about further down we used JSON parse to parse the data, and you could break it into an Ajax call, and you can make repeated Ajax call with a set interval. If I want to, this is interesting, I could check to see if maybe every few seconds, as an example, I can make the set interval function work so that I'm always checking the file. I'm continuously connecting to the file as long as I'm on the page, right? So if a change happens, then I see the change happening. I can use a set interval. Be wary of this. This set interval will also be asynchronous. So it'll wait, let's say X number of milliseconds, and then it'll try and load the page again or load the data. And if it's out of order or out of sync somehow, or if you don't wait long enough, right, then what's going to happen is you're going to get zero. You're going to get nothing. You're going to get an error, right? So definitely a way of doing it with set interval. We can use a set interval function, and we can wait extra number of seconds to load, to do that whole step again, to do the Ajax call. But where I want to go to is this. We can have different data formats. XML, HTML, and JSON are all acceptable data formats for Ajax. So XML presents a challenge for us because of the wordy syntax. Okay, so for example, what you have is you have to swipe through, go through. So positives, it's an extensible format. You're not locked into a predefined data structure. You can make your own. No problem. This is a positive thing. You can parse it the same as you normally would HTML with get element by tag name. You can look at these things and then do the same thing you do with XML or HTML. The downside, it's so similar to HTML. It uses the same DOM standards. It's like a lot of you're going to have to go through and parse a lot of data here that is kind of nested inside of different structures. That's one thing that I see is a big thing. It's very wordy compared to using something like JSON. You can always use HTML as well. And so this is another thing. I want to add in HTML. I can read an HTML file and I can kind of inject it as well. Positives, I can kind of look at HTML and I can store things with HTML as well, even data with HTML, and I can kind of load it in. Negatives, the problem with HTML is it's unstructured. I mean, similar problems to XML. And from a data exchange perspective, if I'm going to exchange data with something else, JSON is just a way more accepted, or XML is a more accepted data format compared to HTML. You don't want to use HTML. JSON, the great thing about JSON data is it's human readable, it's pretty structured. On the negative side, it's so flexible that you can hang yourself with it. And to be honest, you can make it do whatever you want it to do. And one of the things that they do a lot is it's prone to malicious attacks by injecting data in the data stream. Now, you can't normally do that unless you're able to intercept the data, but it's totally possible for you to do that with JSON. XML is a little bit more difficult for that to happen. So what we want to do, I want to load up my HTML. I'm just going to skip down here to where I want to do this, and it talks about how to receive response from the server and this idea of cross-origin problems. A CORS issue, cross-origin scripting or sharing issue, you could be stopped by doing this when it comes to cross-origins requests, right? Like if you try and read a file from the server itself, it'll say cross-origin, what are you trying to do? Or you're trying to read a JSON file from another website, it'll give you this CORS error, and you can get around that by sending some special data. That's what this part is. But before we get there, before we get to this part, what I want to do is I want to show you what it's like to load a data file. So right now what we have is all of our pages, about page, contact page, index.html, and all that. All they're exactly the same, right? We have our header information. There's our header. And then we have our main, and then we have our footer. And it's exactly the same over and over again, these three pieces, right? The difference is in our main. Our main content is where we have data, right? But wouldn't it be nice if we could inject data in the Nav Bar, as an example, that was stored somewhere else? Okay. So how would I accomplish this? Well, imagine if I've got my header information, the entire header file, right? And maybe not the header itself, not the element header, but the stuff inside the header, the Nav Bar all the way down to here. If we had all this, I'm just going to copy it. I'm going to put it inside of a folder. So let's make a new folder. We'll make this new folder called Views, capital V, right? And inside of our Views folder, I'm going to make a new folder, actually, called Partials. Okay, there's our partials. And inside that folder, I'm going to make a new file called header.html. Inside that file, I'm just going to pop in the Nav Bar. There's your Nav Bar. That's all that's going to be in the header. Nothing else. Just the Nav Bar. Okay? And I want to inject this part. I want to read this and inject this part in another file. Okay, so that's what I want to do. Let's inject this part inside of my, since we're talking about products, we're already working with Ajax. Instead of products having its own Nav Bar, right? This Nav Bar right here, right? I'm going to get rid of it completely. So there's no Nav Bar in the products anymore. It's gone, right? And I want to inject inside this Nav Bar data that I get from my partials folder. Now it shouldn't be inside script, it should be inside views. Let's make sure it's in the right folder, because that would be bad. So views partials, all right? Views partials. So partials has its own file called header.html, and that's what I want to read, okay? How do I do that? So I'm going to go back to scripts, I'm going to go to app.js, and this structure that I'm looking at for load address book data, I'm going to do the same thing for my product. So here I'm in this page, in the products page, right? And I'm going to load up my my Nav Bar data. Okay, so I'm going to call this new thing load. I'll call it load header. Okay, load header. And we'll put it above the load address book function, load header. Okay. And I want to do the same things I did before. I want to do these steps. Remember? I can do all this again. So I'm going to take the first 3 steps, copy them. Hey, when I'm copying and pasting, what does that mean? Maybe there's a chance that I can do things differently with another function. And copy and pasting means I'm duplicating. I make a new XHR object. I open, instead of opening data addressbook.json, I'm going to open up views, partials, and then my header.html. So I'm looking at header.html now. Header.html. Wonderful. So this is the file that I'm opening, just like I opened up the thing. And okay, now this is the tricky part. I want to do this part right here, right? Because this part right here, this part, which is my ready state change, that's step 4. And I want to close this off with another curly brace. So anything inside this curly brace right here, right, is the stuff that's I'm good to go with. This stuff in here, okay? And I need another bracket to close that off, because this is actually an event handler, okay? And actually, if I'm not wrong, I think I need another bracket too. Let me see what I got here on the bottom. Yep. Yeah, I need one more of those too. So actually it's more like this. Why? Because this one closes that out and this one closes this out. So that's what it really looks like. What if we name a folder called header and out the link in every file that I have? Yes, we'll put the link for sure, but let me show you. So the header itself, partials is what you want to do. Header is the file as an example, and I want to inject it. But first, what we want to do is we want to do this request. We open up this thing. I want to do something with this request. And what I want to do in this case, instead of parsing it as JSON, it's already HTML, right? Except it's a string. It's a string. So I want to say let, and we'll say this is as header. We'll say header data, right? Equal to XHR dot response text. Okay, so this is our header data. It just takes in this entire file, which is this entire file right here. It eats it up, right? And it stores it as a string. Okay, so that's what it does. It stores it right now as a string. It doesn't do anything with it. I just have it as a string. Okay. So if that's true, then how difficult would it be for me to inject this nav bar inside of my products HTML in the header area? Well, step 1, I need to get access, or I need to hook into this header element. I need to do that, right? Bunch of ways to do that we talked about. I could add an ID, main header. I could do other things. I'm going to do the other things. I'm going to leave this main header the way it is because it's so common, right? So let's go into my app.js now and say, okay, fine. Before I get to this step, in my somewhere, right, I'm going to set up again, I can do this anywhere I want. I can do it here. So before I have my header data, I get it. But what I can do is I want to set up that connection. I can say that let my header, right, equal to document dot get elements. And again, I can do by tag name, get elements by tag name. And the tag I'm looking at is the header tag, right? There's the header tag. I want to get the first header that I find. There's only one on the page, right? The first header I got, right? So this is going to make a connection to my header, so the HTML element. Then I get my header data from the response text, from the XHR object. I'm loading it up from the file, right? That's what's going to be contained in here, right? It's going to be a string, like it says. Cool, I got a string, I got header. Well, what do I want to do? I want to append to my header, right, I want to say that header.inner HTML is equal to header data. Do you think this is enough if I just did this? My inner HTML of my header, which is the thing that I just hooked into with my get elements by tag name, right? I want to get my data from my file and I want to connect it up in there. Is that good enough? Let's take a look. So the way to try this out is to go to my site. Let's go to my site and see if it's broken or not, right? Oh, and if I refresh, right, do I have a nav bar, right? That's the thing. Do I have a nav bar here? Because I'm connecting it to my site here. Because notice there's no nav bar here, right? Not at all. If I go to my index.html, I just want to point this out here so we can troubleshoot here. So index.html, here's my index.html, here's my nav bar. But as soon as I go to my products page, nav bar gone. But let's take a look and see what errors I'm getting in my console. Well, it says nothing. Why? We've never called that function properly, right? We did, but we kind of didn't. Let's go back to my my code and see what happened here, right? So again, I'm saying on ready state, I'm listening to views partials header.html, right? And here's my header.html. It's not saved, right? Maybe that's the reason why. And now let's see, we've got our header again. There's my nav bar. It's been read. See that? And to challenge this, to make sure that we know that this is true, let us, in my load header, give a little console command for us. So console, we want to do a console.info, and we want to say something like, header loading, right? So to kind of say, hey, this is where we are. We're in the header loading stage, right? And then in here, we're going to go console.info, and we're going to say address book loading. Okay, so we kind of have some feedback when we do some troubleshooting. All right, header loading, address book loading. What does this look like here? Well, look, here's header loading, here's address book loading. So we know it went through these phases in order for us to get to this. But there's a problem here. Notice our products, it's not lit up. Home was lit up. When we have the products not lit up. Why is that? Because of the order of execution of our nav links. Okay, so if you go back to our code and you see what crazy stuff we've put together here. Here's our loaded header, here's our load address book, and here's our start method. And now let's take a look. It says in start, let the title be the highlighted active link. Okay, highlight active link with whatever the title is, right? So title is going to call this highlight active link function right away, right here. But that's not going to do us any good, right? Because we're down here in products. We're loading our header after the highlighted active link is taken care of, right? We would have to restructure our code knowing that all of our headers and everything else has to be loaded, and then we want to do this highlight active link stuff. Let me go to that definition to show you. So what highlight active link does, it says, hey, title, let's get it, let's make it lowercase, let's do all this stuff, query selector all for any list item that's on the page at that particular moment in time, and then what we'll do is we'll add in our nav anchors the way we're going to do it. All right, this part. So this is cool, right, this highlight active link, but it only is going to work after we have a header to work with. We didn't have one on our products page because we removed it, right? Our header is empty. So for me to expect that highlight active link is going to work, it doesn't make sense. At the same time, my title is cleaned by highlight active link. That's what it is. My title is cleaned up by this, right? Because highlight active link, if I go to that definition again, it takes the title, the document title, and then it does some work on it, to do that stuff, right? So that way, and it returns the title, whatever we get out of our thing here, right? Now what I could do temporarily is I could call highlight active link after I've loaded my header. So I can do something like highlight active link and not even care about that I'm losing the title. I don't need the title anymore. It returns a string. I just discard it. So I load my header first, highlight active link, and then load my address book. And you're gonna let's hope that we're gonna load this in proper order. Let's see what happens. So if I do this, and if I go back to my page, right? So here's my page again, right? And if I refresh, again, my product isn't loaded, right? And oh, look what happened. The title of the page is products. Successfully added paragraphs to the Jumbotron. We did this. We loaded the header. The title of the page is products, and then we added the address page. But look, when the title of the page is products, it's like it's not finding the products link, even though we're down in here and we're looking for it right after we're loading it. What's happening here? What's happening here is it's happening, guys, asynchronously. And although we're putting it nicely in our code in order like this, yeah, no. The header didn't load before we're trying to check the link. That's what's happening. And as I said, that millisecond of delay time could be enough to stop me from loading it. So instead of putting it here, we wouldn't put it here. We would put it inside of our load header program, right? So after we've loaded our header and we've done all this stuff, and when it's ready, then we highlight active link here, right? This will guarantee that this stuff has happened before we load our active link, okay? And now we should see products highlighted, okay? And that's the nature, unfortunately, the asynchronous nature of JavaScript. If I'm loading this nav bar and I'm loading it dynamically, I'm not making it every single time in my pages. I'm only having one location for my nav bar. First of all, it's fantastic because I can reduce code duplication among pages. Right now, my page for my product page, I just tested it. It's nothing in the header. There's just a header, a blank header there, right? And the only place I need to maintain my header is in this one file right here, which is detached from everything else. This is great, guys. This is what I want to do. But there are dangers to this, right? If I don't have access to my JavaScript for whatever reason, there's not going to be a nav bar. Just saying, okay? Let's do the same thing with my footer. So on my footer, and by the way, I'm helping you with your homework. Your assignment 3 is asking you for this kind of stuff. I'm showing you how to do it here in my example, and I'm going to do it so that you have it. So I'm going to put this up on GitHub now. This is a great place to do this. I'm going to add all these files to GitHub, and I'm going to say something like loaded header partial header with Ajax, okay, something like that, so that we know what we did in this particular thing. Here we go, push. So we did the loading of the header part. I want to load my footer now, okay, and now you're going to see some similarities. Remember we talked about this. I want to load my address book data, load my header, load my footer. Hey, I'm going to do it again. So I'm going to say load footer this time, right? And you know what? Let's copy paste, because you know we're good at copy pasting. So copy all this stuff. Gonna be here, paste it, all this stuff here, and we'll say footer loading. And instead of it's gonna go to header, we're gonna go to footer. We don't have this file yet, but we will. Gonna footer, and we're gonna wait. We're gonna tap into the footer, right? Exact same stuff, right? And our footer is going to be this, and our footer data, which is just a little file, footer data, and here's our footer, which is connect to our footer data. And then I don't have to do this highlight active link because it's not a nav bar, it's just a footer. I'm not highlighting anything there. But this is basically my footer data, and I'm footer loading and blah, 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 and it's a separate file, but a lot of same stuff, right? And that's fantastic, and it's easy to write, but it's really inefficient if I keep doing this over and over again, right? Anyways, let's add another one. So under partials, I'm going to add another file, a new file. We're going to call this footer.html. There we go, there's our footer. And in our footer, I want to do is I want to go to my products page. Here's my products.html. I want to grab these two lines here, cut them out, and put them into my footer. All right, so it's the same footer is going to be now injected like we had before. So my actual products page doesn't have a footer anymore. It just has this footer element, but nothing inside the footer. In fact, these things are completely empty. You can actually just do one of these. So, which is, you know, what people do. They go, okay, we've got nothing. We got header, 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 footer, 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 right? And we got this main content right here that we're injecting in here. All right, that's our main content. Okay, so main is where we're injecting our main content in here. Yeah? So, footer. Footer has some data. We've saved the file. We want to save our products so that we're good to go. And then we want to call our header or a footer, load footer. We want to call this. We haven't called it yet. So we're going to go to the bottom, load header, load address book, load footer. Okay, there we go. And let's see if it worked, right? So we just did this in real time, and do we have a footer? Can we see the footer? Yes, it is. Look, there it is. This footer is loaded after. It wasn't there. It's not part of the HTML anymore, right? And to see what the HTML looks like, if I was to look at this, if I go to, you know, I want to view page source. Notice that there is no footer right here. There is no header right here. What I'm doing actually is injecting it after the fact. See? Page source does not have a header or footer. It's being injected by my files. Okay, so this is something to note, right, how it works. Hey, what about GitHub? What happened with that? Did it finally trigger? Can I actually check the source of this stuff? Does it actually work? It does. And my products page even loads my header, which is loaded from a file. All right? So this is pretty good. Even Bruce Banner got updated. Look, he's on there too, up online. So it works okay, right? I mean, it's not a big issue. Let's go back to this. So we loaded our footer, we loaded our header, we loaded our address book. All this is great and, you know, and glorious. And we've got a structure. We're starting to get a structure for all of our pages. Because if you think about this, right, I'm saying, okay, I'm going to look at adding to all the pages paragraphs to the Jumbotron. I'm doing that. If my success is true, if I'm able to add my paragraphs to the Jumbotron, then I'll say successfully added paragraphs. If otherwise, I'm going to make a warning that says content not added to Jumbotron does not exist, right? Because maybe some Jumbotrons, some places, some pages, they don't have a Jumbotron. And the other thing I'm doing is saying set let valid form validated equal to validate form, and form validated go to definition. Validate form says, hey, can we get a form? If I've got a form, then cool. If the contact form exists, do this, all this stuff I've asked you to do. Otherwise, return false if I can get there, right? If I don't have a contact form. So that's my contact form, but my contact form is only really good on my contacts page, right? And my products has all this structure over and over again. I mean, really, my address book is only really good in my products page, right? And now we get to the point where we say, is there another way we can structure this so that way I can make it more generic and I can create a structure like a page switcher, right? So let's suppose I want to do this highlight active link stuff, but instead of doing all of my highlight active link, right, I want to go to definition of my highlight active link and I want to strip some stuff out. I really would like my title to be separate. So this part here, let title, document title, all this stuff, I think that should be just generic. That should be something that I get every time I switch a page. I switch a page, instead of highlighting the active link here, I want to get this part and I want to make it separate. It has nothing to do with my active link. So I'm going to strip this part out, right? And we're going to make a new function that's like get title of page or something like that, okay? Function, we'll call it get page title. And it cleans the title up, right? Because what it does is it says, hey, get the title, convert it to lowercase, and then once we've got the title in lowercase, we can play with it, right? So it kind of cleans up the title a little bit, okay? But it's separate now than highlight active link, right? One thing to note is that title, this title here that I'm trying to return from get my active link, as an example, doesn't exist. So now we can talk about some stuff that exists in the function space. So I can make something that exists up here, or I can make something that exists not here, but rather inside of my function, in my start function. So I can make title start here, and then pass it in or something else. That might be the safest way to do it. So I'm going to start off like this. So I'm going to kind of copy this for now. I'm going to go into my space here, right? I'm going to make this title, document title, right? Inside of my get page title, I'm going to pass in title, right? I'm passing in title into this thing. So instead of me rejigging what this is, I'm going to say title is equal to document title, right? As an example, title is equal to title to lowercase. I'm going to say the title of the page is, it's just cleaning the title up. That's what it's doing. And I'm going to return out, back out, I'm going to return title. So this kind of does the cleaning part that I wanted to do. Anytime I need to clean up the title, I can go to get page title from here, from this function. Okay, as an example. Let's try with this first. So what I want to say is title is equal to document title. Cool. Right? I get the document title out. And then what I want to do is I want to pass it into that get title. So get page title. I want to pass in title. And I want to pass it back out. So I'm saying, hey, pass in title, clean it up, and then store it back here. All right, back in here. But this title is something that's been created along this line right here, right? So we have access to it. Next, I don't need to pass title back out of highlight active link. I don't need to do that, right? So because I've already got this happening up here, I just need to pass it in to get active link, because it's going to check to see where I am. So here, I don't need to do this. I don't need to pass it out anymore. I do need to pass it in though. So I'm going to say title. So title gets passed in here, and then it can be checked. Okay. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to put this one way up here. So we're going to say app started up here. Title, get the title, output the title, right? And then we're going to pass in, we're going to get my active link here, but we're probably going to change the order of this in a second. So we need to do this. Okay, so we got my title. If we want to pass it in, we can do that. We would have to do the same thing when we use the title up here. So when we go to the load header part right here of this page, notice this header, what it does is it highlights active link, right? And we need to have a title for that to do, whatever the title is, which means we have to pass in title in here as well. Okay, now here this pass the baton stuff that some people don't like, but I'm just starting. I'm just starting to rejig what we have, okay, because we need to do this. So again, we start, we get the page title, we clean it. That's what this one does. We pass it into highlight active link. We try and add paragraphs to the Jumbotron. For each, if the page does have a paragraph to the Jumbotron, we'll try and add it in, right? If success, we'll add it in. If not, we won't. This part, to be honest with you, is kind of useless. Adding paragraphs to the Jumbotron, only if it exists. I mean, we're going to add our own content to the Jumbotron, so here I'm just going to delete this part. And that means that I don't need this part right here anymore. Adding paragraphs to the Jumbotron by finding the paragraph and then injecting the data as an example, and that little contrived example is pretty useless. So I'm probably going to get rid of it right up to here. I don't need this anymore, because we're going to make a site that actually has some functionality right now. Validate form is a valid function because it validates a form, but it only should work on my page. So that I don't need to do yet. Let's go back to this. So validate form is only going to happen if I'm on the contact page, and I can avoid checking to see if the form exists and all that kind of stuff, like this part here, right? If I'm on the contact page, because then I know for sure the validate form would work. This just returns true or false if my form has been validated, right? See what it does? It doesn't really do anything. It doesn't stop me from doing anything. It just says successfully validated or not, right? Or the validation form does not exist, right? So we're going to modify this. I want to do this, right? But what I want to do is use a switch case. So I want to do kind of something like this. I want to say switch, and I want to switch on title, of course, right? So our switch case does something like this. I can say case, and if the title is, you know, as an example, home, then do something. If the title is, you know, contact, then do something else. If the title is, you like how this is happening? If the title is, I'm going to fix this in a second, products, then do something else. If the title is services, then do something else. Don't worry about the order right now. The formatting is terrible. Contact, product, services, and about us. About. Case, about, and okay? And let's just fix this up so that it doesn't look like a ladder, right? I don't know why Visual Studio Code does that, to be honest. I think it just tries to help, but it's actually not helping. So that's the structure of my switch case. I'm going to switch through. Depending on what page I'm on, I'm going to do different things. And I may have to highlight this highlight active link thing. I'm going to do something else with it right now. So here's something, right? I mean, depending on what it is, I'm going to load my header. I'm going to do something with the content, and then I'm going to load my footer. Guys, loading my header and loading my footer should be every page, not just one page. It should be all of them. So that's something outside of the switch case. Load my header, do some content, load my footer. So that means that load my header should not be here, but rather should be here. And because load my header actually includes highlight active link, I don't need this. Because loading header, when I load my header, which is happening here, I'm highlight active link. I'm highlighting active link. When the header is loaded, I activate the link, right? That's when I'm doing it. So that takes care of that. Loading footer should be done after I do my content. This is for the content. And that's what this is. This is like content switcher. Okay? But my loading the header should happen with every file, and loading the footer should happen with every file. So load footer, because that's going to happen every time too. Load header, content, load footer, right? So I don't need to do this anymore. So the only thing I need to do on my products page is just do this part, which should be here. Is that not true? Load address book, right? Products, I've already done my header. I'm loading my address book, then I do my footer. Done. And then for my contact page, I want to validate my form. Do this part. But I know the form exists because I'm on my contact page, right? So I can get rid of all this. And now we're starting to find some clarity, some structure, finally, with all this insanity that we were doing so far, right? Why? Because this makes sense. In our start, we go through, and we only call the stuff that we need when we need it. We don't have anything in services that's special right now, or about, or really home. We don't have anything there, right? That we've done inside of there. So now the next part is removing code, not adding code. And what do I mean by this? First of all, let's go into validate form and see what's in there. Go to validate form. And then we say let contact is equal to the contact form. We make a new contact form. We do all this kind of stuff. And then at the end, as we go down, we say, well, return false if it gets to this point. We don't need return false because we don't really care. We're never going to need to do that because it's basically either going to skip this or do it. If the contact form doesn't exist somehow, well, what are we doing here, right? So this check that we have for if contact form, it's unnecessary. So we can remove it, which means we can remove one more curly brace at the bottom. This one. Because we're in the contact form. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be in the contact form if we didn't have this. So, and let's just format this so that it's just spaced in one more step, just so that way we don't confuse ourselves. If I can actually just highlight everything without killing myself here. There we go. Right? So we've done this now. So we're cleaning up. We're reducing code a little bit. There's still plenty of code duplication, but we can even do further reductions. But we're not going to do that right away. We're just slowly, we're just reducing white space and going through and making sure that we have everything we need to make things go. Okay, so load footer, we don't have to touch. Load header, we don't have to touch, right? We pass in title in here, and then we pass in this title from here into our highlight active link, which is the title. We pass it through, right? Which makes sense because this way we only have to do title once. We start, we make the title, we get the title page from the get page title function, we load our header, and we go through here and validate form or load address book. This is what we want to do, guys. It's much cleaner than what we had before. Okay. We haven't tested it though. And the other thing we have to do is inside the other pages, like the about page, we can get rid of all this stuff. Let's get rid of all this because it's not going to be different. The header and the about page and the HTML pages that we find everywhere else, none of this is going to be different. It's going to be the exact same, in fact. Why? Because you don't need to change it. Look at, like, our pages are almost identical, right? We could take it one step further. I'm just afraid I don't want to mess you guys up, but I could even include some of this, right? The CSS. I can include all that stuff in there too, but one step at a time. Contact. Let's do the same thing with the contact. We don't need to include this header. It's all the same stuff. It's exactly a duplicate of the other thing. There's nothing different in our header and inside of our, in our footer. The only difference is inside of our data, which is inside of our main. Okay, that's where our data is right now. Okay, and we can actually change that too, right? One step at a time. So contact is changed. Index.html, same. We don't need all this stuff, right? It's the exact same. We can just get rid of it. And some of you might be freaking out right now going, wait, he's just deleting swaths of code. Yep, I am. Because you don't need it. It's going to be already injected if we did everything properly. Okay, cool. So nothing in there. Services, same thing. But what it makes it is our website becomes all of a sudden more maintainable than what we had before. Because if I want to make a change to my footer, or if I want to make a change to my header, or even if I want a different footer, right, or a different header, I just have to load it in. I don't have to specify it in a specific spot, like in the same page over and over again. So we got services, products is cleaned. Just looking to see that that's all cleaned up. Yes, services, index, contact, about, right? And then we have our products. So I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're all good to go. All right, so I think we've done everything. Let's make sure that the about page is saved, that the app.js is saved, and let's see what kind of errors we got on our page. So far, so good. Products is working. Home is working. Services looks like it's working. About us is working, and contact us looks like it's working. So, guys, a lot less code, right? Much easier to read, just like Nushik says, and more forward thinking in terms of our, in terms of our maintainability. Okay, let's put this up on GitHub. That's a lot of changes. So we'll say reformatted, or we'll say restructured, which is better. Restructured project to switch pages, which is what we did. We want to add this whole thing to the staging area, and then we want to do this. And let's see now, after we do this, later on we'll check to see if GitHub likes it, like the stuff we did. Because sometimes what happens is this asynchronous stuff, is happening, and GitHub may not like it. But this provides us a great structure. If I want to add something special for home, I make something to do with home. If I want to make something better with services, services, about, something with about. Right now, our home and our services and about they don't do anything, right? Because we haven't done anything with them. Okay. So, so this is one step we can take, and I think this is a really good step, right? Because what's happening is we've reorganized stuff. We're loading in our files, and so on, right? We're doing that so that way when we're being in here, we can. All I really have to do now is just look at this. I'm also passing around my title. I'm passing my title around a bit, right? Because a couple places need it. There's other ways to do this. For example, I can have my title inside somewhere else, like the global space. But the problem with that is you never know when that title's been updated. Here, you know that this title is carrying forward an update based on when it started, which is here. And it's going through the process and getting my page and everything else, from getting it cleaned, and then as we go through here, it's passing it through. So it's pretty good. I'm comfortable with this. I'm okay passing it in a couple of spots. I'm totally fine with that. You could try reducing that as well. Okay. Now the other reductions that we can make, and we're talking about refactoring, this is the process we're going through, is under views I have partials, right? And my partials are footer and header. But I could also have under views content pages. Okay, hear me out here. So we can take it a step further with content pages. So right now we have header, main, and footer. Well, why not inject the content that we want for each file inside of our main and footer, right? Okay. Now here's where I'm going to freak you out. What about only having one page? It's exactly the same, right? And our links, which are home and blah blah, even our title, can be created from our JavaScript. And we don't really have more than one page. It's truly a one-page site that I'm loading. I'm not loading content from these other places. I'm injecting content into my template of header, main, and footer. I'm injecting content. And if I inject content, then I only need one HTML page, my index.html. The rest, I can spoof being into a contact page or an about page or anything else, because the content is the same. It really depends on which link I click. If I click a link that tells me I'm supposed to have my about contact, I can swap out my title and I can do whatever I want. So I could go there. For now, let's just do my content, which is what we want to do in here. Our content we want to swap out. So just like we have views partials, we're going to have views, and I'll make a new folder called content. So in my content now, I can have about, contact, index, products, services, like this, right? And this is where we can actually get some use out of that that stuff. So let's make it. So new file. I'm going to have this thing called index. Actually, we're going to call it home. Home.html. Home. A new file called about. You're going to see where I'm going with this in a second. A new file called contact. And a new file called products and services. Okay? Bunch of files, empty. Excellent. All right, let's start with my about page. My about page has this stuff. It's pretty garbaggio. There's nothing in it, right? We're just going to take our main, just one step at a time. I'm just building it with you, right? Just bear with me. Okay, so this is our about page. Let's go into my about content and about us. Okay, and let's go into my contact page. This is now a lot of stuff with my contact form, so this is going to be tricky. but let's try this out. And we're going to go my contact and paste. Okay. And we're going to go into, let's make sure we save that one. And we're going to go into my index. So far we've done about and contact. And now we're going to go index. Index, we're going to take this part. We're going to cut it out. And we're going to go like this. I'm going to get there with you. And we're going to put this in there. Wonderful. And we'll save. Products, same thing. We'll grab all this. I'm sure you see the pattern at this point. So products, we're going to go on our products page and paste. And the last one is services. We're going to grab all this, cut it, go on our services page, and paste. Let's just make sure that these services looks as good as our products because I want everything to be the same. In fact, so much the same. It's exactly the same. Now, there is no difference between one page and the other page over here on the outside. Now that's screaming for me to reduce to one page. Screaming. It's saying, hey, you have all these files here. You just put all the content in here. Why do you need all these files? I can only have one. Again, I'm going to say one step at a time. Let's get the file data from here first and then work on the next. Cool. So we're going to go into our app.js again. And just like we loaded our header and our address book data and so on, right? We're going to load our data, right, in here for all the other stuff. Our data is going to be loaded in here, but what we need is a hook into our main. So we're going to say that let main equal to document.getElements by tag name main, right? We're looking at the first element that we get as a main, all right? And inside here, we're going to say that we want to load the data, right, for main. So now we need some functions. And this is where the functions go a little crazy. So we're going to say function about content. Okay, there's our about content. We'll scaffold them out, okay? And then we're going to say function. We're going to say contact content. By the way, you don't have to do functions, but it's just separation for us, right? In fact, you can even have separate files. We're not going to get there. I don't want to totally kill you guys. And then function, we'll say home content. And then you get where I'm going. And then right? Got a little functions here that I've written. They're all these about, contact, home, products, and services. And what I'm going to do is each of those things returns something into main, right? So I could say something like, well, then main.innerHTML is equal to, and then we'll start off with home content, right? And I'm going to copy paste this. It's only going to fire once. We got to think about this for a second. What's happening here? Maybe the validate form doesn't have to be in here. It could be inside of contact content, right? Maybe. And the same thing goes with address book. Hey, maybe address book doesn't have to be in here anymore. So we'll say address book. Products content. Products content. Okay. And I gotta think about this for a second. And main.innerHTML is equal to services content. And main.innerHTML is equal to about content. So this is the process. You're going through a process of refactoring. You're thinking about ways of making it better, and yet you've got duplication. So we're going to get to the duplication part. So let's go into these functions. And about content, we're going to say that just like we did before, we're going to use the loader structure that we used here in my load footer and all this other stuff, right? This structure right here is what I want, right here, right? And we're going to copy paste this part. Copy paste. So we'll say about content loading, right? Da-da-da, ba-ba. Instead of partials, we're going to look at content, right? The content folder now. We're going to load up our about.html, right? About content, da-da-da-da, ready state change, da-da-da. It's going to look for, instead of what we're going to get, right? Now this is interesting. We're looking to see the footer information and we're attaching it, okay? I could totally do that here instead of what we've done in the other place, in the other step, which is down in here we're saying main, we're doing, instead of loading main here, I could load main actually here, right, inside of my about content. So this part, I could do this. And then I could say, well, my main data, or we'll call this main data, is equal to the response text, and then I can say my main.inner.html is equal to this, to my main data, which would save me a step from returning anything out of here, which means I wouldn't even have to do any of this stuff. I can just call the function. So now there's less duplication. Right? Hold on. Bear with me. We're even going to go further than this as we reduce. We haven't even tested any of this stuff to see if it works. This could be breaking our code right now. Our whole site could be done. Broken. We only have 12 minutes too. Aren't you nervous? Alright. Blah, 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 blah. We've done this part. We execute. We load our main. We do it. We execute. And we've got our content for our about page. Yep. Let's do our content for our contact. So copy. Go here. Paste it. Instead of our, we'll say contact content loading, we'll go into contact.html instead of our content folder, right? We're listening for main. This is the same. Main data is going to response text, and we're going to attach it to the main of where it is in our page. Same exact stuff, exactly. Now we're really paring it down. We're actually seeing a lot of duplication and opportunities for us to go even further down the rabbit hole, because literally, look, I'm not even changing anything anymore. I'm literally just going here and loading it up and injecting it, loading it and injecting it. Okay, cool. And sorry, making a couple of changes like this: home content, home, and that's it. This part doesn't change at all, right? And ba-bum, and this will be products, content loading, products. Gotta be careful with this is the same, products.html. Voila. Our dance is still going, and then finally services. Services content loading, services.html, right? And again, I'm just really wiping through this whole thing. And now we can think of, wait a minute. I got my contact form. Well, why don't I just validate the form now that I have it? So get that validate form, and I know it's going to load because guess what? In my home content, right? Sorry, in my contact content, which is here, I'm going to load up my main. Here's my main. And then after it's loaded, I want to validate it. All right, so that makes sense. And you know what? I'm going to load my address book data after my products content. So cut that out. Go to my products content. I've loaded my product, my header, and then as soon as that's done, I load my data, right? Yeah? And now we're left with a little bit of a leaner structure, which could have a million errors because we haven't checked the darn thing. Let's just make sure we save all. So we want to file. I like to kind of, if there was save all, look at it's already saved, but if we had to, we would be there. So a lot of possibility now of errors. Tons and tons, because we haven't checked a darn thing. Okay? Home. Looks like it's okay. Products. Looks like it runs. Services. We're good to go. About us. Everything's fine. Contact us. We're golden. My friends, we did this all, and it's like, I know. Head and pretty soon, yeah, it's all, and all we need is like two things. Yeah, that's right. I'm injecting everything else, but that's how it goes, guys. We've kind of evolved our web structure, right? Our website. We've gone from a lot of structure to down to very small amount, right? A very small amount, but still we have a ways to go in terms of fixing. Why? Well. This is the next part. And this is the trickiest part. And we can't cover this today. We don't have time because it takes a little bit of reworking. Because think about this. I go to my index.html page. In my index.html, I click on a link. The link isn't really there, right? The link is inside of my header, which I've loaded just now, right? My index is the first place we go. That's the entry point for our app, right? And the index could have a home link. That's what it could have, a home link. But when I go to my second page, right, it doesn't need to have a link anymore. It doesn't have to have, we don't even care about the title anymore, right? I literally want to inject stuff into main due to whatever I click in my navigation. If I click something in my navigation will only load once, right? It won't load again and again this way. If I click something in my navigation, I can energize that link to highlight to make it seem as if I've gone to a new page. I can inject my data in here, right? And I don't care about, I mean, I can even change my title if I want, but I don't really care about my title. That's not going to drive it anymore, right? The difference is in my nav bar, and this is, I'm going to leave you with this, all right, because we're going to come and fix this next part. So here's my header, partial. Right now what's happening is my nav links actually are real. Okay, they're actually real. But what we're going to do instead is we're not going to make these real. We're going to make these nav links actually little hashtags that don't do anything. And we're going to listen for whenever we click on these links with JavaScript. What it's going to do is it's going to switch our content. It's going to look real. It's even going to look like a link, but it's not going to go anywhere. The only time it's going to go anywhere ever is this link. This is the only active link. This one and the logo. Okay? The rest, we don't care. Why? Because if I click on my products, I'm not really clicking on products. I'm not going anywhere. I'm just filling in my content to make it look like I'm in another page. I can even change my URL to make it seem like I'm on the products page. Right? But I'm not on the products page. I'm going to trick you. I'm going to be on my index.html the entire time. One page. I have nothing to load. Again, I don't have to load between pages. And it's the fastest way of doing things. And by the way, that's what we're going to do when we go into the future of frameworks. The frameworks, what they do is they have a single page that they construct for you. And it's done from the back end. So we're going to get there. We're not going to do it today. We're going to start with this next day. So I'm going to close everything. Let's collapse all these pages. Right? And what I want to do is I want to collapse all these editors just to make it nice. And now I have a bunch of stuff to put up on GitHub. All right, so I'm going to go here. I'm going to say these are all the things I changed. Lots of change. I restructured my site. Restructured site to inject content right now, right, on different pages. We're not quite where I want to be. I want to be able to inject content on the same page. And that's called, kind of what we did in on your midterm test, which is a single page application, a SPA, where I'm injecting stuff in my page. I'm not actually moving from one page to the other. And the only thing I need here in the main page is an index.html. We're going to get there next day, but slowly. Let's check and see if all these changes work online, because that is the big test. Because if it doesn't work online, then, well, who cares about this stuff? So we're going to get there. We're going to go to, I'm just going to close some of this stuff up here. So here's our products page. And I want to go to my GitHub page. So GitHub. And I want to look at this. Here's my lesson 9. And you can see that I got a link it's been deployed. Let's go to my details. Here's my link. And then now this is where the issues come into it. Look at home doesn't have any content. And then neither does products. So products is okay. Services, well, there's just this, but home somehow, well, it was not there before, was it? When we went to home. Services, about us, contact us, these are okay, but home, something was wrong with home when we first went there. Like when I went here, when I went to my link for the first time, I got this, right? Why? And why is there nothing here? Because there is no title. There is no link here. I've gone home and I'm looking at my index.html, right? So even though my title is home, right? This is an error. This is a bug that I got to fix. It'll work if I click onto it, but it should happen right away. So there's something we have to take care of, and I knew that was going to happen. But this is interesting that we're loading everything, and everything is dynamically loaded from within my views folder. My views folder now has the following structure: my content for my pages, and my content for my footer and my header, and I can have any other partials I want. Guys, I have to end for the day, but we're going to get there. I'm going to put this, the link for our page today should be up online. So if you look on in our weeks, I want to put together our create a link for our week. So we're going to say GitHub link for week 9. And what I want to do is I just want to go back to that GitHub link, wherever it's going to be, way back over here. All right, and that should be good. You guys should have everything you need to get going on your assignment and then some. Now, some of you may ask, what if I want to make my assignment like you structured it? You don't have to. The only thing I'm looking for your assignment is your header and footer to work like this. You don't have to make all your content work like this because you only have 3 pages. It's not a big deal. It's not going to be a lot of savings, right? That's for assignment number 3. Okay, guys, thank you so much. And for those people who are going to join me on Linux, I'll see you in a few minutes. For the other people, I'll see you on Wednesday. I'm going to stop recording now.